Welcome to Biography with Plutarch, where we delve into the lives of remarkable individuals to uncover the intricacies of human character and the timeless lessons that emerge from their experiences. Today, we embark on a fascinating journey through the life of Bob Dylan, a figure whose profound impact on music, literature, and culture has been felt across generations. As we explore the early years of this iconic artist, we find ourselves in the midst of 1940s America, a time of great social change and cultural upheaval. The post-war era was marked by a sense of optimism and uncertainty as the country struggled to come to terms with its new role on the world stage. Born Robert Allen Zimmerman on May 24, 1941, in Duluth, Minnesota, Bob Dylan's life began in a small, close-knit community nestled on the shores of Lake Superior. The city's rugged beauty, with its rocky coastline and rolling hills, was a constant presence in his early years. His father, Abram Zimmerman, was an electrician who had moved to Duluth from New York, seeking better opportunities, while his mother, Beatrice Stone, came from a family of Lithuanian Jewish immigrants who had settled in the Midwest. This blend of cultural influences would later become a hallmark of Dylan's eclectic and innovative artistic style. As a child, Bob grew up in a middle-class household with his older brother David. Their early years were marked by the warmth and security of a loving family, with parents who encouraged their son's curiosity and creativity. The Zimmerman home was filled with music, from the folk tunes that Bob's mother loved to sing while cooking dinner, to the classical compositions that his father admired. Abram would often play recordings of Mozart and Beethoven on the family phonograph, introducing his sons to the world of classical music. These early exposures would sow the seeds of Dylan's future musical explorations. The Duluth of Bob's childhood was a town of contrasts, where the beauty of nature coexisted with the harsh realities of economic hardship and social inequality. The city's once thriving shipping industry was in decline, leaving many families struggling to make ends meet. Yet, despite these challenges, the community remained tight-knit and supportive, with neighbors looking out for one another and local businesses serving as gathering places for friends and family. This sense of community would later influence Bob's songwriting, as he explored themes of social justice and the human condition. As Bob entered his teenage years, he became increasingly drawn to music, particularly the rock and roll and folk sounds that were beginning to sweep the nation. Artists like Hank Williams, Woody Guthrie, and Little Richard captivated his imagination, offering him a glimpse into worlds beyond the confines of his small town. He would spend hours listening to the radio, mesmerized by the likes of Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry, and teaching himself to play the guitar and piano. The rebellious spirit and creative freedom embodied by these musicians resonated deeply with Bob, inspiring him to explore his own musical talents. In Hibbing, Minnesota, where the Zimmerman family moved when Bob was 6 years old, he attended Hibbing High School. It was during this period that Bob began to develop his skills as a musician, forming his first band, the Shadow Blasters, with a group of friends. They would play local gigs at school dances and parties, experimenting with different styles and genres. These early performances not only honed Bob's musical abilities, but also gave him a taste of the thrill and camaraderie that came with creating and sharing music with others. The historical context of Bob Dylan's early years was marked by significant social and cultural shifts. The post-war era in America was a time of great change, with the civil rights movement gaining momentum, the Cold War escalating, and the emergence of new musical genres like rock and roll challenging traditional norms. The rise of suburbanization and consumer culture was also transforming the American landscape, as families like the Zimmermans moved from urban centers to smaller towns in search of a better life. These events would later influence Dylan's music and his role as a voice for his generation. His parents' Jewish heritage and his father's experiences as an immigrant also played a significant role in shaping Bob's worldview, instilling in him a strong sense of social justice and a desire to challenge the status quo. The small town of Hibbing, with its close-knit community and rugged natural beauty, would also leave an indelible mark on Dylan's psyche. The vast expanse of Lake Superior, which stretched out before him like an endless canvas, inspired a sense of wonder and awe that would later find expression in his songwriting. As he navigated the complexities of adolescence, Bob began to feel the constraints of small-town life, yearning for the freedom and creative expression that only music could provide. As Bob Dylan's passion for music continued to grow, it was as if he had stumbled upon a hidden world, one that pulsed with the rhythm of rebellion and creativity. The vibrant folk scene in Minneapolis, where he attended the University of Minnesota, became his playground, a place where he could experiment with sounds, styles, and ideas. It was during this period, in the early 1960s, that he began to develop his unique voice and style, influenced by the likes of Woody Guthrie and Robert Johnson, whose haunting melodies and poignant lyrics seemed to speak directly to his soul. He would often perform at local coffee houses and clubs, such as the 10 O'Clock Scholar, where the air was thick with the smell of freshly brewed coffee and the sound of laughter and music. It was here that he met other aspiring musicians and poets, kindred spirits who shared his passion for creativity and social justice. The atmosphere was electric, with impromptu performances, heated debates, and late-night conversations that stretched into the early hours of the morning. As Dylan later recalled, it was a time of great excitement and discovery when anything seemed possible. In 1961, Dylan dropped out of college and moved to New York City's Greenwich Village, a hub for folk musicians and activists that seemed to vibrate with an otherworldly energy. He was determined to make a name for himself in the music world and to learn from the masters. It was here that he met Dave Van Ronk, a veteran folk singer who became a mentor and friend, taking Dylan under his wing and introducing him to the city's vibrant musical scene. Van Ronk would later recall Dylan's early performances, saying, "He was a kid with a lot of talent, but he was also very rough around the edges." Despite his rough start, Dylan quickly gained recognition for his unique songwriting style and poetic lyrics, which seemed to capture the mood and spirit of a generation. On April 11, 1961, Dylan made his first appearance at Gerda's Folk City, a legendary club in the village that was synonymous with folk music. He was just 20 years old at the time and was introduced by Van Ronk, who had taken him under his wing. As he stepped onto the stage, Dylan felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through his veins, his heart pounding in his chest like a drum. Over the next few months, Dylan became a regular performer at Gerda's, honing his craft and building a loyal following. He would often take the stage, his guitar slung over his shoulder, and launch into songs that were both deeply personal and universally relatable. In July 1962, Dylan traveled to England, where he met British folk musicians like Martin Carthy and Bob Davenport, who introduced him to traditional English folk songs and ballads. This trip had a profound influence on his music, as he was exposed to new sounds, styles, and themes that seemed to broaden his musical horizons. Upon his return to the United States, Dylan began to incorporate these influences into his own songwriting, creating a unique blend of American and British folk styles that seemed to defy categorization. In 1963, Dylan released his second album, The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, which included classic songs like Blowin' in the Wind and A Hard Rain's a Gonna Fall. The album was a critical and commercial success, establishing Dylan as a major force in the folk music world. As he later reflected, "I was just trying to make a record that would be a little bit different, something that would make people think." The album's impact was immediate, with songs like Blowin' in the Wind becoming anthems for the civil rights movement. As the civil rights movement gained momentum, Dylan became increasingly involved in activism, using his music as a powerful tool for social commentary. In August 1963, he performed at the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, where Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. The event was a pivotal moment in American history, with hundreds of thousands of people gathering on the National Mall to demand equality and justice. Dylan's presence at this historic event cemented his reputation as a voice for his generation, and his music continued to inspire and influence the movement. Throughout 1964 and 1965, Dylan toured extensively, performing at colleges, festivals, and coffee houses across the United States. He also released 2 more albums, The Times They Are A-Changin' and Another Side of Bob Dylan, which further solidified his reputation as a master songwriter and performer. His live performances were always unpredictable, with Dylan pushing the boundaries of his music and challenging his audiences to think critically about the world around them. In July 1965, Dylan shocked his fans by appearing at the Newport Folk Festival with an electric band, marking a significant turning point in his career. The decision to go electric was met with both praise and criticism, with some fans feeling that he had betrayed his folk roots. However, Dylan was undeterred, believing that music should be a reflection of the times and that the times were changing rapidly. As he took the stage at Newport, Dylan felt a sense of trepidation mixed with excitement. The crowd was divided, with some fans cheering and others booing. But as he launched into his set, Dylan's music seemed to transcend the controversy, speaking directly to the hearts and minds of his audience. It was a moment of raw energy and creativity, one that would go down in history as a defining moment in Dylan's career. As the 1960s drew to a close, Dylan continued to push the boundaries of his music, experimenting with new sounds and styles that would forever alter the landscape of popular music. In 1967, he released John Wesley Harding, a sparse, introspective album that marked a significant departure from his earlier work, which had been characterized by its frenetic energy and poetic complexity. The album's stripped-down sound, featuring simple melodies and acoustic instrumentation, was a deliberate choice, one that reflected Dylan's growing interest in exploring the quieter, more contemplative aspects of his creativity. The recording sessions for John Wesley Harding took place in Nashville, Tennessee, where Dylan had relocated with his family in search of a more peaceful and secluded environment. The city's thriving music scene and rich musical heritage also played a significant role in shaping the album's sound, as Dylan drew inspiration from the country and folk traditions that permeated the air. As he worked on the album, Dylan was surrounded by a talented cast of musicians, including Charlie McCoy, Kenneth Buttrey, and Pete Drake, who helped to bring his vision to life. The following year, in 1968, Dylan released Nashville Skyline, which featured a more country-tinged sound and included the hit single, Lay Lady Lay. This album was marked by its warm, sunny textures and gentle melodies, which seemed to capture the carefree spirit of the late 1960s. The song, Lay Lady Lay, itself became an unlikely hit, with its catchy chorus and memorable guitar riff making it a staple of FM radio. Despite its commercial success, however, Nashville Skyline was not without its critics, some of whom felt that Dylan had abandoned his earlier, more experimental approach in favor of a more polished, mainstream sound. This period of Dylan's career was marked by a sense of introspection and experimentation, as he sought to explore new musical territories and challenge himself creatively. He was reading widely, devouring the works of authors like William Blake, Arthur Rimbaud, and Franz Kafka, whose influence can be heard in the album's more mystical and symbolic lyrics. At the same time, Dylan was also immersing himself in the world of visual art, studying the works of painters like Vincent van Gogh and Paul Cézanne, whose bold brushstrokes and vivid colors seemed to echo the expressive qualities of his own music. In the 1970s, Dylan continued to release innovative and influential albums, including Blood on the Tracks and Desire. The former, released in 1975, is often cited as one of the greatest albums of all time, with its raw, emotional soundscapes and poignant lyrics that seem to capture the tumultuous spirit of the era. As Dylan himself observed, "I was just trying to make a record that would be a little bit different, something that would make people think." This willingness to take risks and challenge his audience has been a hallmark of Dylan's career, and has earned him a reputation as one of the most innovative and influential musicians of his generation. The recording sessions for Blood on the Tracks were marked by a sense of intensity and urgency, as Dylan worked tirelessly to capture the emotional essence of his songs. He was accompanied by a talented cast of musicians, including Tony Brown, Billy Cross, and Eric Weisberg, who helped to bring his vision to life. The album's sound is characterized by its stark, stripped-down arrangements, which seem to emphasize the raw emotion and vulnerability that lay at the heart of Dylan's songwriting. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Dylan continued to tour and release new music, although at a slower pace than in his earlier years. He also became increasingly involved in painting and visual art, with several exhibitions of his work taking place around the world. The award was seen as a major milestone in Dylan's career, one that recognized his contributions not only as a musician, but also as a poet and writer. In his later years, Dylan has continued to tour and perform, although with less frequency than in his earlier days. His live shows have become increasingly theatrical, with elaborate stage sets and a focus on storytelling through music. As he reflected in a 2019 interview, "I'm just trying to make music that's meaningful, that's going to last." Despite his advanced age, Dylan remains a vital and creative force, continuing to inspire new generations of musicians and fans. Today, Bob Dylan is remembered as one of the most important and influential figures in popular music. His legacy extends far beyond his own music, with his influence visible in everything from rock and roll to hip-hop. As a songwriter, he has been praised for his innovative use of language and his ability to capture the mood and spirit of his times. As a performer, he has been celebrated for his charisma and stage presence, as well as his willingness to take risks and challenge his audience. His music has inspired countless fans around the world, and his influence can be heard in everything from Bruce Springsteen to Kendrick Lamar. As we consider the enduring legacy of Bob Dylan, it is worth recalling the words of the great poet and critic, Allen Ginsberg, who once observed that Dylan's songs are a kind of atomic poetry, exploding with images and ideas that seem to capture the essence of our times. This ability to tap into the zeitgeist, to capture the mood and spirit of an era, has been a hallmark of Dylan's career, and one that continues to inspire and influence new generations of artists and fans. That's all for today's Biography with Plutarch. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, remember that understanding the lives of remarkable individuals helps us better understand ourselves.